So we'll start this session with a discussion on. Hi, can you hear me? Hello. Chatai, are you there? Can you hear me?
Yes, clear.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. In the spirit of RRSA and trying to explore new directions, and IEEE has pioneered Wi-Fi, and so it might be a good topic to consider a joint like heterogeneous RIC that combines Wi-Fi and cellular within the scope of IEEE ORAN activities. So just wanted to motivate this possibility and explore what we could do together. And this is something Chata used to had started the NGRG architecture task force in ORAN, the Next Generation Research Group. Within that, we had discussed a heteric capability where we go beyond, say, disaggregated ORAN components, and we could include Wi-Fi or non-terrestrial network components, potential 6G future nodes as well, as so on. And you could have a heterogeneous non-RT RIC or a heterogeneous near-RT RIC, and depending on latency sensitivity. And if the optimization really needs much lower sensitivity, we would just do it in the end nodes itself. And if you can lift it up, you could go to either the near-RT RIC or the non-RT RIC. Now, this capability that I'm thinking could probably be done in a heterogeneous non-RT RIC to combine Wi-Fi and cellular. So it would be, I think what we can think of is some sort of a resource optimization across these networks. And potentially, when we think of network slicing, and we think of an end-to-end application requiring a certain amount of resources, then we can see, hey, how much resource is available on the cellular network, how much is available on Wi-Fi, and maybe we can combine both as well and have multi-path connectivity potentially as well. We do have things like Wi-Fi offload, for example, in cellular networks. And if the UE comes in contact with the Wi-Fi access point, you kind of automatically offload to the Wi-Fi. But you could do something smarter, especially if the RIC has information, statistics from the network, and finds that the Wi-Fi network is heavily congested based on the channel utilization that other devices have reported on that thing. Then it may say, hey, no, stay with the cellular network and so on. So it may have preferred target nodes for service. And potentially, if both the cellular connection and the Wi-Fi connection have adequate resources, you could combine them as well, and then create an aggregate network slice potentially across these technologies. So these are things that I'm thinking that, as we collect information through the SMO coming into the non-RT RIC, and we could combine information across technologies from the devices that are reporting information, then from that particular area, then that could help in more intelligent decision-making in the systems. So in general, though, we can think about heterogeneous RAN optimization, optimizing across heterogeneous network access nodes. We could have disaggregated RAN access nodes versus non-disaggregated as well, and heterogeneous across technologies. We could think about combining and optimizing resources, different types of resources, spectral efficiency, bandwidth, compute, storage, energy, virtual support for a virtual PCI, which would start extending the identifiers across all available nodes, and then do a network-wide resource optimization. And also sometimes, you can have conflicting decisions with regard to resources. You may want to minimize energy, and at the same time, you want higher performance. And those could be conflicting targets for optimization. So for that, you might want to do cross-resource or joint optimization as well. And then UE-specific resource optimization for a particular UE based on its requirements. And then distributed network resource utilization and optimization, such as mobility, load balancing, PCI optimization, energy optimization, so on. So in the broader scope of things, there are a lot of interesting problems that we can explore for heterogeneous RAN optimization. But I thought first we will just address maybe an RSA proposal for just coordination across Wi-Fi and cellular. And, as we go forward especially with 5G small cells and Wi-Fi APs typically having similar ranges and stuff, coupled with maybe 5G or 4G macro cell and FR1, and the 5G small cells are operating in FR2 potentially. All of these technologies could be serving a particular location. And so what do you use at any given time? And so the RIG could be aware of the utilization across these technologies to help in decision making. And particularly when we bring in Wi-Fi, we are looking at maybe static, quasi-static, or low mobility scenarios. And the RIG would help in assisting for mobility across these technologies. So we could think of enhancing an existing RIG to do this, or we could think of a separate heterogeneous RIG that then combines information across technologies. And also we may, within 3GPP, there is non-trusted access and trusted access. Trusted access tries to use like the same authentication to actually go onto Wi-Fi, whereas non-trusted allows different credentials to be used and still connect to the Wi-Fi. And we could think of pre-authentication mechanisms potentially that would work across these technologies to enable seamless roaming. And then, also invite industry and academia to contribute to this kind of work. Now, what kind of information do we have today? I mean, in cellular networks, we have KPIs such as accessibility, retainability, throughput, latency, and so on. These are periodically generated and, would be available in the SMO. They're derived from performance counters, a combination of measurements from counters are used to derive these KPIs. Now, these counters are very specific to different vendors, so that may be very proprietary. But then we could think of these KPIs, the higher level KPIs, as being sort of a more common set of metrics that would work across vendors, so that we could say, hey, let's expose this for this level of optimization. And especially we're thinking, say, doing this at the non-RT-RIG level, at this level of abstraction, maybe this can go cross-vendor, cross-technology kind of stuff. Wi-Fi networks also have KPIs with 802.11k. You get information about channel utilization, signal quality, and so on. And client devices make measurements and report information. So that can be used as well. And so a heterogeneous RIG capability can combine information across these kinds of metrics. Now, what do we already have? We do have like Wi-Fi offload, right? That is, it triggers a handoff to a Wi-Fi AP if the AP is detected. Is that adequate? let's think about it. And then within cellular mobility, we have, say, for example, SON capabilities like automatic neighbor lists, and a serving cell asks the UE to measure its neighboring cells, and the UE reports the information, the PCI values, RSRP values, and the serving cell selects the target cell with the strongest signal for handover, right? In Wi-Fi, you have 802.11k, where the client device can request an AP for a list of neighboring APs. So the AP is maintaining a neighbor list, just like ANR for cellular mobility. And then the device receives an action packet, it's a management frame, which contains the Wi-Fi channel numbers for the neighboring APs. This way, the client device does not have to scan all possible channel numbers, but knows which one to focus in that particular area, and then gets measurement reports, can figure out what the channel utilization is, signal quality is, and so on. And then there's also a protocol called 802.11v that helps in selecting the target AP. So it's now looking very similar, right? So we could try to.
I have a question. Can I ask?
Yeah.
Do you have more on the existing capabilities? Any other slide? So one thing I thought you probably know, 822.21, which is media independent handover, MIHF. So I was involved when it was initially started, and Subhi took it over as a chair. It had talked about application layer a little bit, but it had talked about handing over, right?
Yeah.
You ahead of time prepare so that you have seamless. I just thought I'll mention that.
Yeah,
that
we
is
could leverage some of those.
Yeah, you can look into that.
The pre-authentication.
Yeah,
stuff. Okay, cool. Sounds good. Yeah, you're the security master. We should let you.
It was good work. I mean, somehow deployment hasn't picked up, but the ANSF
definitely leverage that.
3GPP has that ANDSF.
Yes.
That initially talking about this collaboration among the 3GPP and IEEE. So there was a functional component called MIIS, Media Independent Service and Discovery, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that specific piece somehow 3GPP thought could be useful, and that got into as ANDSF.
ANDSF, yeah. So the Wi-Fi offload uses ANDSF. Yeah. So what could we do? I mean, I think the heterogeneous rig coordination can provide assistance potentially by combining this information, learning information across these technologies, maintaining the neighbor lists across these technologies, and the KPI information, whether it is the throughput and accessibility or retainability on the cellular side, or it's with the channel utilization and signal quality. What we actually need is how much resources are actually available, in the network. What kind of what is the total capacity minus the current utilization, so that what is the available amount of resources that can be allocated, and then what is the potential load that you might anticipate, so that available capacity could be redistributed across those resources. Some kind of more interesting calculations could be done to determine which entity provides service. And so the rig could enhance the cellular ANR and 802.11k information that's available, and maintains information and assists in the Wi-Fi offload. So it could either select an appropriate Wi-Fi AP, or based on the past measurements, or it could stay with the best cellular connection, for example, or you could now consider multipath connectivity as well. We have options for multipath TCP connections as well. So that could combine and enhance the performance by combining bandwidth across technologies. So, so that's what I had. So I was thinking that maybe we could explore some kind of proposal to do this kind of work and potentially standardize it as well.
So do you have any kind of a diagram yet in terms of showing by any chance? I think yesterday, no, yesterday. I mean, just to show the, obviously the handover between cellular Wi-Fi is important, right? Even Wi-Fi 7 is now working on a lot of additional things like even priority
Yeah.
service, right? If you have a priority service in cellular, you want to maintain the same thing when you hand over to Wi-Fi, there are a lot of projects like even led by Department of Homeland Security. They are working on it. So I mean, that could be another KPI, for example, right? If you want to make sure the right priority access mechanism is available. I mean, they're coming up with primitives so that you have like 10 access points, maybe 3 of them support priority access. So during the association phase, you figure out who are those, and then you connect to those instead of connecting to others who do not have priority access.
Right. So this can be like in the scope of, in the spirit of Open RAN, that we have policies and things like that. This can be as part of the intent and part of a policy description, and that could be programmed in to select that.
Will this purely get the RAN related information, or you're also looking into what's happening in the behind the RAN and the code side? Are you thinking about
end to end? I think right now I was only looking at just the RAN transport.
Over there.
But then, yeah, if you wanted to look at end to end slices, but usually transport core, we don't really worry about it as much in terms of performance relative to the wireless link itself. So,
I mean, sometimes it happens you may have the best SNR and best congestion-free RAN, but you
It
pick
could be
an
the
access point
transport is
behind the
backed up.
router, you have
Yeah.
too much congestion.
yeah, I think if there's an entity that's doing the end-to-end slice management, then that can
Right.
estimate the overall performance end-to-end. But if we end up using the same transport and the same core network paths, then it's okay.
So-
But if it's Wi-Fi, you can directly offload off, right? So then you don't need that connection. So the end-to-end slice could be performance could be improved maybe on
Right.
Wi-Fi.
I think we have this interworking function like NC-IW in 5G or TWAG
Right.
and all those, right?
Right.
EPDZ, like
Yeah,
interaction when you're sending it.
right.
If you're going over the core, you have to go through these gateways, right? So
Right.
we may probably need some interaction there too, right?
Yeah.
Once you choose.
Especially if you're using like the same credentials or something that could go across,
Right.
and you're still going through the operators network and stuff. Yeah.
So the benefits of having, I know you're having a discussion here. I see there is a strong value under having a heterogeneous rig because of the fact that people will be handing over from cellular to Wi-Fi back and forth, disastrous areas, so cell tower fell down, or
Yeah.
you're going into basement somewhere down, don't have any, you have to switch over. And in fact, the fast responder talking about resiliency that Chatai talked about, to provide resilient communication, it is important that you hand over to the right network with proper quality of service.
Or with, multipath TCP, maintain multiple connections, And so, and you can use the best path at any given
Have you
time.
looked into any research? Have people done any research? I like the idea of this whole notion. I mean, perhaps to explore that. But this is a new concept, what you're proposing. Have you seen any research?
Not yet.
People
No,
have done.
no.
Yeah.
So we could.
So the
But I think
802.21.
a lot of capabilities are already there. It's probably more of, hey, some intelligent assist, say into the Wi-Fi offload system itself, for
Right.
example, which says, okay, whether to use a potential target AP or not, and things like that, right?
Right.
So,
And it can
but
very well
it
fit to Chatai's suggestion, what you was telling, right? Because
Yeah.
this rig can interface with.
yeah, and this can provide essentially resilience as far as the wireless connection is
The
concerned.
Chatai has a suggestion. Oh, he said discuss offline. Okay. Okay, that's fine. Yeah, he may be busy with his. Something. Alex, please go ahead, please, Alex.
Yeah.
Alex, you have your hand raised. I don't know, previous hand or new hand. Could be a previous hand. I'm not sure. Alex, are you still online? Alex Galban? Right. I think we see few raised hands. I don't know whether these are old hands or new hands.
Oh, Alex, you're muted. We can't hear.
Yeah. Alex, you're muted. Kindly unmute. Or you are connecting? I think he's still connecting to audio. Just send him a chat that I think he's connected now. Hey, Alex, you wanted to say something? You're on mute.
Alex, we can't hear yet.
Yeah, now it should be able to. Please speak. Are you double muted? Are you double muted, Alex? I think.
I'm not double muted. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Now we can hear you. Got it.
I was connected over the phone, but it didn't work. Okay. So from standardization point of view, I think it's very important here to draw the picture and decide how much dependency are you going to have from Wi-Fi, because if this is a Wi-Fi project, it has to be taken up with 802. At least it has to be socialized with them, and they may make a decision that they want it, or they may hand it off. Like, for example, I have a project in my standards committee, which is 802 dependent, 100% dependent on 802. It's 1904, but it's a 8023 system project. It's sitting in my standards committee. However, it's 100% tandem to 802. So they do these things, but they have a prerogative to make that decision. So unless you're using like a stable and existing KPI and you don't care what happens in Wi-Fi, because that KPI is here to stay, and you are doing something in your access point, RAN access point, you don't have to talk to 802. But I suspect that you do, because you have ambitions to have really like optimization here, and then you may have your own. You may envision another API, and they will not do it unless they are involved in this. So this is like a dependency. By the way, in the PAR, there is always a question how much this standard depends on another standard. And if you were doing a PAR today, you would have to say that it's dependent on 802, right, 11, or just 802, right, because there may be. So okay, so that's one thing. Second, I would caution against going end to end, because for IEEE standardization, you really want to take a module which is has a life on its own, because IEEE doesn't have intimate relationship with 3GPP. We do have relationships, but not an intimate relationship with 3GPP. And therefore, you have to take a module that has a life of its own, and revision of a standard will require just IEEE decision to revise the standard, and not permission from 3GPP or something like that.
Right. So I think that we can do it in a couple of steps, which is we could first think about extending the existing RIC capability to actually just absorb information from Wi-Fi. But you're right. I mean, the Wi-Fi entity should share its capability within to another entity, so that a joint coordination across the network should be possible. And if there is an existing API, we could leverage it, or we could ask for an extension for that purpose. But then the decision making is at a higher level. And then the programmability of the network comes in as to which connection the device uses. And that could still go through, say, the recommendations coming through the Wi-Fi offload call flows, potentially, to decide if you're choosing for multipath connectivity. I think that would which would be concurrent connections across maybe 2 cellular paths and 3 Wi-Fi paths or something like that. To aggregate bandwidths, we could go wild there, but maybe at least one of each. Then that could require a different call flow to be modified. So yeah, we may need extensions within these technologies as well. But we could start initially by just aggregating information and making recommendations from the RIC. And then how that recommendation is used from a programmable architecture, what hooks do we have and what do we have to extend, we can start exploring.
Yeah, you need to draw a picture. What happens with multi-vendor? Like I have in my house 3 different phones with the 3 different vendors, AT&T, T-Mobile, and Verizon, and plus 2 Wi-Fis from 2 different vendors.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
Okay, but this I think this is at least a study, probably a research project, where you have to, what Ashutosh suggested, to draw the picture and show all KPIs needed and show the all potential information that has to flow through these KPIs. So you determine whether you have it made already or you have to plead with 802 to give you a specific API.
Right.
KPI, and then of course the access point. So if you draw the picture, then yeah, this is good actually.
Folks, but I just want, I mean, forget about the core part, right? No, that's okay. No, what I was saying, I just wanted to put the context because it's good to have a picture. And you can replace the 4G with 5G and change the EPDG to N3IWF or TWAG and all those, right?
Yeah.
Is what is happening, as Alex was mentioning. I am connected to 4G or 5G. In this specific picture, I'm showing connected to 4G network. And then I may hand over to trusted, untrusted, or there may be multiple untrusted Wi-Fi networks around me. So how do I decide, right? So there is the thing that is missing here is exactly what you're suggesting. Some kind of a heterogeneous RIC that will coordinate all these things. And what Alex was pointing out, that don't go beyond EPDG, what's happening on the core, because you may not, that'll be, end-to-end QoS is different. Although that is an important thing for the operators. If you're handing over, I might have the best SNR, best less congested RAN, but on the back end, I may be completely choked, right? So Alex, I think, if you look at this picture, this kind of, highlights the need for something like that, right?
Yeah.
And we can map 5G into, I just didn't have it in my laptop. I just thought, let me just show it anyway.
Yeah, you see, if you go ambitious and do end-to-end, you need service layer agreements, level agreements with who knows who. You have to start smaller and test the network. Like you just run a test sequence. You just test the network, how good it is here, right? You can do it. If you make that RIC pretty intelligent, I don't know who owns it. Of course, the access point owns it, right?
So access point, somebody can provide that KPI. So what is happening in this picture, we are just looking over the RAN, right? And this was specifically to address the priority service, which is being discussed right now in Wi-Fi 7. This picture shows that cellular goes away, something happened to cellular, I need to hand over, in this case, the fast responders. And there are several access points, and some access points are congested. Maybe I cannot hand over, right? So
yeah.
So that's the main idea, right? So having a controller that has the ability to collect the information, a KPI from the cellular, and at the same time Wi-Fi, they may be back-to-back RICs, or could be a composite RIC. That has the ability to digest the information from either and take the action. I think it's a good way to think about, right? I mean, that's what probably Dilip you have been thinking, right? I just want to show a use case, exactly how it might look.
Can you guys take this research project in ORAN ICADE, or you need to open a new item?
I think at some point Dilip had suggested long back, if I remember Dilip, one of the meetings, this idea came from you from the very beginning. And we just never got a chance to place it out. I mean, now that you have some thoughts, we can probably write up a document like Chatai wrote, right? And maybe put it in the PAR format. I see a need for something like this.
You're not ready yet for the PAR because you don't have the basic information. Like, what would be the PAR? The PAR, what you're trying to standardize is a REC, right? That's what you're trying to come up with. This is your conceptual entity. REC that knows everything. It knows API. It knows the Wi-Fi. It knows the cellular. Now, does it know one cellular or all cellular? This is the problem.
So,
what if I have three cellulars and two different Wi-Fis?
So, Alex, what do you suggest? Should we just write up some kind of a document? Some kind of a maybe small white paper. What do you think, Dilip?
Right, something like that.
I think your suggestion is really good to kind of also look at across vendors and stuff like that. So I think we could have a proposal that is very broad, and then we could maybe actually the actual implementation is a subset to begin with, maybe one cellular plus Wi-Fi, but the broader scope could be that this master intelligent entity understands everything in that particular location to give the best service to the user.
I love this. You know, actually, this is a great idea. Why? Because it allows you to go hierarchically. If you could have a standard, which is or a guide, which is a framework for intelligent, whatever you call it, intelligent REC or some capability, you know, just for a capability, and describe what do you need into that capability, what has to come in, what has to come out, what are the environmental characteristics, etc. So, and that would be by itself a good guide, recommended practice or guide, whatever. And then from there you could go in for specific implementations, but you will know what do you need.
Right. Yeah, we'll plan for that. So we'll I'll work on a document and circulate it.
Call it intelligent or something, you know, like smart REC or Intelrec. Intelrec. I don't know.
Yeah.
Because that's what you're inventing, basically. You are coming up with a concept that if you had it, that's what you get. If you had this, and this, that's what you get.
Right. And can be an assistance to the client to finally decide whom do I connect with, kind of thing, or what multiple connections do I use, and so on. Yeah. We might also have an MVNO within the scope of things as well, right? Maybe. Yeah. Okay. Cool. Thanks.
I think you have many of the.
Somebody's talking, but I can't hear him.
So I think what I was telling is we can hash.
Somebody else had a
What?
had a hand. I think.
No, I was doing it.
Oh.
I was projecting from my.
Oh no, there was somebody else had a hand.
Somebody has a hand. I think maybe an old hand. But I have seen that hand for a long time. So Sanya, are you still there? Okay. Anyway, so we got to place out that
Sure.
whatever you want to call it, then see. But I still see a value of this. We have to hash out how this can be done, what API collection, then how to even enforce it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Will that work with Wi-Fi? I think we have to maybe take a look at that. That's a comment.
Right.
So we have to see what just gap analysis first, right? Is there anything exists? Okay.
At the same time, you know, from a RIC perspective, you're actually not collecting instantaneous information and trying to figure out. You're collecting network metrics across UEs, across users in that particular area. So you have a full view of the network. And so we can think of this thing as some sort of an intelligent controller that's providing advice about the overall utilization of networks and so on. So with the analytics functions that are there. And so that assistance, I think, can be complementary to the existing call flows that are there that will actually trigger the connections.
But do you know all these users? You see, where would that be very useful? Like, for example, I live in a house and I still have a problem with my neighbors because they take all the channels. I have to use 5 gigahertz channel. So you don't know the users, right? And you don't know their providers. You just, whatever you sense, that's you have.
Yeah, I mean, I think at home, typically we'll might use Wi-Fi and go with it. Maybe if you're sitting at the airport and it's very congested for the Wi-Fi connection, we might still use a cellular, or cellular is also congested. You're trying to figure out what's the best connection. It might be part of the extension of the RIC in the operator's network to actually help you decide what to connect with by aggregating information.
Right. So it's a cognitive. It's more like a cognitive radio. Right? It's a cognitive RIC. It can be knowledgeable RIC, but then it has to own everything. It has to know everything about everybody around. Right. But if it's just cognitive, it just senses. Okay, there are no channels. That's it. Bad luck.
Technically, potentially though, with the open, disaggregated nature of evolution of our networks now, this can be a component that's part of that open architecture that maybe different vendors could even say, hey, I'm providing this capability to integrate within the overall ecosystem.
Right, but there is no protocol of publishing what they're providing, right, for you right now,
right,
available to you. So
yeah. So I was thinking it might be easier to extend the definition of the RIC right now to absorb the Wi-Fi and then take a decision. But I think the question that you have raised about going across vendors, across operators would be like a real master intelligent entity in your home, or going across the networks that provides assistance at the airport or in the mall. Who provides that? That would be an interesting challenge.
Yeah, the people would have to register with you, right?
And there, I think it could be an MVNO service. Maybe you have service through this MVNO that has that it borrows services across all of these operators and Wi-Fi networks, and then provides the best service possible.
Right. So this is what your research challenge to resolve the identity of the RIC. What the hell am I? What can I do? Am I a god?
I think the single cellular network combining Wi-Fi could be absorbed within the scope of a vendor operator, and that master thing that you're envisioning, Alex, that goes across cellular could be probably an MVNO capability.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, you can have series of RICs too if you want. I was thinking we need to go to the next. Is there any other thing? Alex, we'll take your suggestion, and Purba, I think we'll talk to you about. And Dilip, you and I can work on the technical side.
Thanks, everyone.